Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. 6:30 Saturday night in Death Valley. Feels like an elimination game for a pair of two-loss football teams. Tony Tsoukalas covers Alabama. He's the managing editor for Tide Illustrated, part of the Rivals Network. Good enough to give us a little bit of time on the Jim's Firearms Hotline as we crank up hour number 2. Tony, thanks for the time. How are you?
Yeah, doing pretty well.
Glad to hear it. Give me a vibe check on the fan base in Tuscaloosa. Year one post Saban. Year one of the new head coach there, Kalen DeBoer. A couple early losses. How are things feeling in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, well, I mean, this fan base is not used to having two losses early, so they're not super happy with that, as you can imagine. I think it's kind of I think the real vibe check will be after this game, because I think it's either going to it's going to skyrocket one way or the other. I think people are going to just hop right back on the bandwagon for Alabama if they can find a way to beat LSU, and then the world will end if Alabama loses 3 games in the first week of November. So, I think it's just kind of we'll have to kind of wait and see. There's a lot of uncertainty around here, as you would imagine with Nick Saban out of the picture.
Why does Alabama have 2 early losses?
Yeah, I mean, look, the game against Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee's a good team. You're on the road. I think a lot of people, I kind of, penciled that one in as a potential loss. The real unexplainable one is the Vanderbilt game. And look, I know Vanderbilt's a different team this year. It's a better team than it has been, but I still can't believe that an Alabama team lost to Vanderbilt. It's really been the third down defense for Alabama. I think it's been really tough. They've allowed their opponent to. In the first half of the Tennessee game, they were able to kind of keep Tennessee off the field, but in that second half, they let the balls kind of stay on the field and wear down the defense. And then against Vanderbilt, I mean, it seemed like Vanderbilt completed every single third down conversion it had. And then on the flip side, it's just, when the defense has stepped up like it did in the first half against Tennessee, the offense can't do anything, and the offense is having turnovers or can't find the end zone. So they hadn't really played a full, complete game until the last time out against Missouri. And even that, you look at it, you're like, well, is that really a complete game, or is Missouri just terrible without Locke at quarterback? So I don't know.
What was so good in the first half of the Georgia game? I guess it's everything, but I mean, that was one where everybody kind of looked and went, oh my goodness. And I don't know that it's been quite like that since then.
Wait, sorry, say that again?
Yeah, the first half of the Georgia game, I'm assuming that's the best version of Alabama. What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, everything was clicking, right? You talk about that complete football. You have the defense making turnovers, the offense capitalizing on them. There were some red flags in the middle of that too. I mean, Georgia had a few deep balls that they could have connected on that Carson Beck overthrew. But all in all, I mean, they were putting Carson Beck into tough situations. They were capitalizing on that. Jalen Milroe was, really explosive. He was making good decisions. He was running the ball really well. Everything that you've seen flashes of was all kind of culminating into one at that point. And so that is Alabama at its best. We only really saw it for 2 quarters, but it's out there, and I think that they can get back to that. It's just a matter of kind of capturing that lightning in a bottle and then, being able to use it time again.
I look at the box score, and I certainly didn't watch all of every game. I've got, obviously, obligations with LSU, but I look at the box score against Wisconsin and against Georgia, and those are obviously the 2 games where Alabama scored a lot of points against a Power 5 opponent, and Jalen Milroe ran a lot in those games for a lot of yards. And then I look at the box score against Vanderbilt and Tennessee, and he didn't. Why at times do they have trouble getting him going in the ground game?
Yeah, that was a good question. There's even, concerns or thoughts or speculations rather of him being hurt. He needs to kind of realize, and the thing that Kalen DeBoer says, he needs to realize what makes him good as a quarterback, and really instead of looking for that big play downfield, sometimes it's better just to take off and run, and maybe that's 5 yards, but those are 5 productive yards instead of taking a sack or scrambling and throwing the ball away. I think the thing that's bothered Jalen Milroe has been pressure. You really saw that in the Tennessee game. That's something that LSU's done really well. So that's what I would look for in this matchup is can LSU pressure Jalen Milroe into situations, and then, can you kind of bottle him up and then force him into some of those, passing situations where he doesn't, under pressure that he doesn't excel in. And then, can you capitalize on that as well? Last year against LSU, the Tigers weren't able to bottle him up, and he just ran rampant. And that was kind of like the beginning of, Jalen Milroe's kind of breakout. He had a huge month in November, and it kind of all started with that game. It'll be interesting to see, if LSU is able to do a better job of that, and then I think that the environment too of Tiger Stadium, could add to some of the chaos. And if you can get that pressure on Jalen Milroe, it could kind of maybe add to the situation, maybe force him into a mistake.
Yeah, you've mentioned pressure a couple of times. Last year, we know Alabama allowed more sacks than anybody in the Southeastern Conference. This year, statistically, that looks better. Has it looked better to you on the field, the offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, it's been – look, you've got Caden Proctor's been drastically improved. He was terrible as a true freshman. I think he led all Division I players in sacks allowed, or if not, he was at the bottom of the list. He's gotten worlds better. I mean, he is now a strength for Alabama. You've got Tyler Booker at the guard position. The center problems that they were having last year aren't there anymore. I think the problem that you circle, and the real reason why I can't just say that it's better, is that right tackle spot has been so inconsistent. You've got a 5-star guy in Elijah Pritchett who, can make some really great plays. He's a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker, but even as a pass blocker, he can hold his own. But when he misses, man, sometimes he just totally whiffs on blocks. And then they lead to big plays. They lead to either big sacks or, you saw in the Vanderbilt game, the fumble that Jalen Milroe had late. I mean, that was just on a play that Elijah Pritchett just whiffed on. And so Alabama can't have that. They're going to need a lot more consistency from him. You would think maybe with the open week that they're coming off of, maybe they can kind of fix some of that stuff and kind of, get back to the fundamentals. We'll have to see. I mean, the open week, a lot of times it does stuff, but it can only do so much. So, that's what you got to have to look for heading into this weekend. I would say it's improved, but there's still plenty of cracks in the armor, if you will.
Everybody talks about Ryan Williams, his age, his highlights, the whole deal. I think LSU fans are pretty familiar with him. What is another playmaker or two that Alabama absolutely needs to have a big day on Saturday?
I don't have to tell you about Jalen Milroe, but the Washington transfer, Jeremy Bernard, is the other receiver, the number 2 receiver, and he's been kind of coming on late. I think he could be a big guy, depending on if it rains, and maybe Alabama has to go more to the ground game. You saw Justice Haynes, the sophomore running back, he didn't get 100 yards, but he ran really well against Missouri. And I would almost call it a breakout game for him, even though the numbers might not totally suggest it. He had some great runs, and I think that might foreshadow some future success. So he's a guy I'd watch for. And then, on defense, LT Overton, that's a guy that's, I think maybe even going to play his way up into a potential first-round pick. Alabama might not have a first-round pick, but he's one of the guys that's mentioned in that category now. And, obviously he'll be going up against Campbell and, some of the best tackles he'll be facing. So that's a matchup, too, that I want to watch. But, those are a few, I guess. I mean, I think a lot of the matchups on the line both ways are going to be, vital in this one.
I had this written down to ask you, and you kind of alluded to it there. We know that Alabama over the last 20 years has been as talented a roster as there is in college football. You mentioned maybe they don't have a first-round pick. Do you think the talent level has dropped off a little bit on this team, specifically with the defense?
They're just super young, and they've got a lot of good but not great, star players at the moment. They got some really could Jahad Campbell could he maybe play his way up to early second? I mean, he's having a great season, but I don't know if he's, going to be the guy that's going to be a first round guy. You look at the positions that Alabama, that produce first round picks, and Alabama, Caden Proctor will probably be a first round pick if he continues to play like this, just because of his size and his talent. And, he's really made a jump, like I said, in the sophomore year, but he's not eligible at left tackle. Tyler Booker's having a good year at left guard, but are you going to draft a guard in the first round? That's not, some of those positions. I wouldn't say it's a drop in talent. I just think that there's, they don't have an elite, stand up edge rusher, the kind of guys like Will Anderson and Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell and those guys that they have. They don't have that NFL type guy right now. I mean, LT Overton's a little bit different. He plays that bandit position, so a little bit heavier than that. He might be that guy, but they don't have those positions that you really look at. They're really young at cornerback. I think there's first-round talent on this team. It's just not developed into the point it was. I think with the transfer portal, you're going to start seeing that is you don't really have those guys that are the next wave. You might have to jump a wave. You might have to go from experienced NFL guy and then all your reserves left. So you're kind of going to inexperienced freshmen. And when they get good, then they'll probably even, you lose that middle tier of a roster now in the transfer portal. As something that I've noticed, not just with Alabama, but just everyone is kind of losing that second unit. I would say everyone's second unit is maybe not down in terms of, talent, because you're still recruiting a lot of big time kids, but in terms of like readiness, I think most teams, not just Alabama, are kind of lacking in that area from where they were from before.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think you're seeing that across the board, folks leaving when they don't have a chance to get to the field really, really quickly. So that's interesting. All right, Tony, we appreciate some time, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Tony Tsoukalas covers Alabama for Tide Illustrated, part of the Rivals Network. That was interesting. It's evident to me in hearing him talk, and he certainly covers some day-to-day, that Alabama just has a good football team. And they don't have that absolute, that intimidating, dominating, rip-you-apart machine that they had for so long. They're just good. And there's a lot of good teams. LSU's a good team. Ole Miss is a good team. A&M's got a good team. Tennessee's got a good team. Like, there's a lot of good teams, and Bama's just one of the good teams. They absolutely could come into Tiger Stadium and win by 2 scores, but that doesn't change the fact that they have been in a dogfight almost every week in conference play. Dogfight with Vanderbilt, lost. Dogfight with Tennessee, lost. Dogfight with South Carolina. Dogfight with Georgia. Those teams some are good, some are not as good, but I mean, they're in a dogfight more often than not. It's just not quite the same as it was. And to hear him say, they probably don't have a first-round pick on the defense. I mean, that doesn't happen. It hasn't happened in 20 years. And so they may have one that's younger that hasn't quite emerged to that level yet, but it's a fascinating deal, and I think it's going to be an unbelievable football game on Saturday between a couple teams that are good. One of them will be in a good position to make the college football playoff with work to do, and the other one is going to be on the outside looking in and maybe looking at the ReliaQuest Bowl or whatever the heck else happens in Florida on New Year's Day. That's Tony Tsoukalas. Appreciate him for giving us a little bit of time here on this Monday. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.